Okay, we will get started. Hey, everybody, my name's Cassie. This meeting's being recorded, so we're going to send everybody a recording after. And today we have an amazing lineup of people who are going to share some of their tips and tricks around how they generate hundreds of thousands of impressions every single month on LinkedIn. And we'll start by I'll share who they are. So we got Danica, who's a co-founder and the CEO at Caddy AI, and then we've got Charles, who's a co-founder at Content Viking. And just before we start, maybe if anyone wants to share their LinkedIn profile on the meeting chat, and then we can connect. I'll connect with you, and I'll go make sure to like and comment on your posts, whatever your most recent post is. But feel free to go ahead and drop your link in the chat. So today we've got our two guests and Charles, who Charles is, and I think this is important because these are people that are really doing it. They're actually getting the results that we all are aiming to achieve. And so we've got Charles here who runs Content Viking. He's a co-founder there, and he has generated millions of impressions for his clients. And then we've got Danica, who's co-founder and CEO at Caddy. And Danica generated over 700,000 impressions just on her account alone, and about a million impressions across all of her team's accounts last year, and she grew to over 9,000 followers. And I think what's most interesting for her and her team is that their number one customer acquisition channel is actually LinkedIn, and they're generating hundreds of leads. And so, what you're going to get out of today is I want to make sure that you walk out with actual actionable systems. Danica, Charles, and I met and talked, over the last 2 weeks just to make sure that anything that we share with you is actually actionable and you can use yourself for your LinkedIn and for your business. And so, what you're going to walk away with is a repeatable posting system that saves you time. We're going to share how we're turning impressions into actual warm leads, and then how you can make content work even if you have a small audience. You could even have a couple hundred followers. You don't need to have thousands, and you can generate results. So I'll let Danica start and maybe talk a little bit about her story and what she's learned. And then we're going to take a little bit of time at the end. So we'll go over a few slides, and then we're going to have some time for questions towards the end of this of the webinar.
Awesome. Thanks, Cassie. Hey, everybody. So as Cassie mentioned, I am the founder of Caddy. I started my company about a year and a half ago. And when we first started the business, we started testing paid ads on LinkedIn and Google search, which I realized very quickly was super expensive. I think we were talking like, I don't know, like you have here, $125 per CPM. And when I did the math, that's about $12,000 US for 100,000 views. Um, so really quickly, I was like, okay, maybe I can try to post myself on LinkedIn. And I started realizing just how many eyeballs you can get on LinkedIn. It's probably one of the most underutilized channels ever. And the best part is that you can do it pretty much for free. You can see on the right side, I had a few posts that I got to those numbers basically just posting myself. So I realized really quickly how powerful LinkedIn can be. In terms of why most LinkedIn content fails, I learned this the hard way. Basically, if you post randomly, you might be that person that like musters up the courage to post one post, maybe like once every blue moon, and you're like patting yourself on the back for it. Unfortunately, that doesn't really work. You really need to be super consistent, is probably the number one most important thing I've learned. Even if you think your post is mid or like, 60% there, I wouldn't worry. I've actually had a lot of those posts be my biggest, most successful posts. So you never really know. And at the end of the day, being consistent has been by far the number one thing that's been helpful for me. And then poor quality content is the second. Obviously, you don't want to sound like AI. You want to be authentic and still be in your own tone and voice and all that stuff. And thirdly, which is something that everyone I think forgets, is having a system in place to work the leads. So it's one thing to just go and post. It's a whole other thing to really nurture all of those leads and make sure you have a system in place to actually track those leads. So I know Charles and Cassie are going to go into that. But yeah, working with Content Viking and Postbeam has obviously been a huge help for all of that, which they're going to go into. And then, yeah, in terms of just my success with LinkedIn and posting, so Cassie mentioned, I actually looked at my stats the year before I started posting consistently and working with these two. I had 234 impressions in the year. And then the past year of working with these guys, I'm almost at 1 million impressions now, just on my account. I actually checked recently. And then you can see my posts per year. I posted 576 posts, which is a lot, I know, but looking back at all the demos we get, I would say over 90% of our demos at our company are through LinkedIn. And you can see on average, it's like for every, 2.5 posts, I'm getting a demo, which is pretty incredible. So if you're a founder, if you are a marketer, if you're a salesperson and you're trying to get leads, I mean, personally, I think LinkedIn is probably one of the lowest hanging fruit for 2026. And obviously, if you're using the right tools, you're able to do it in a way that isn't super time consuming for yourself and the team. So I'll let the two guys go into how you can do that, but this is just my own experience using LinkedIn.
And maybe one thing just to chime in, like I know like you can use Postbeam or Content Biking, but you don't need to, right? Like to be successful. I think you already were successful before we started even working together and helping you. It was just a matter of like being consistent at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you can definitely post on your own and see how it goes. I think it just, myself, I was so busy with so much other stuff that having that consistency is difficult if you're just doing it on your own. But you're right. Like you can totally just get out there and start posting yourself and testing the waters and kind of seeing what sticks for sure. And the last thing I'll say is like I was listening to this podcast by Elena Verna, who's the head of growth at Lovable. And she talks about how nowadays B2B is like B2C. Like you need to sell to your end customers as though you're like a B2C company. And I think now people want to buy from people. They don't want to buy from brands. So it's going to be even more important now to stand out by having your own brand image, specifically through LinkedIn. So I'll leave it with that, but those are just my tips.
Nice. And maybe just one poll question for people. I'm kind of curious, like when it comes to creating content consistently, I'm just going to send it a poll. I'm just curious, like how often do people poll per week or post per week? I'll just leave that poll open. Just curious to know how often people are posting. I try to post at least 3 times a week. If I can do four or more, that's amazing. But let's see. Cool. Couple people thought 3x a week. A lot of people at least one time a week. And Danica, how many times a week do you post?
I post at least every day, if not twice a day.
Okay. And you're also posting from different team members' accounts too.
Yes, yeah, we've got our whole team posting and across the team, I'd have to check, but yeah, we definitely get a lot of demos and impressions for sure.
So your team is effectively creating, over 60 posts a month.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. So the content engine, we'll get into the content engine. And I'll let Charles talk about how you can actually build a content engine and go over like what actually makes a good post today.
Yeah, thanks, Cassie. Hi everyone. So I'm Charles. I have my own agency, Content Viking, and Danica is one of my most successful clients. So I want to share some of the best practices I've learned while working with dozens of B2B founders. So in terms of getting a really successful LinkedIn post, there are three important things. Number one is a strong point of view. So you want to post something opinionated, something new, something people haven't heard before. And ideally, you want to do that with the first two lines of your post, and that's what we call a hook. So if we look at the first post of Danica's here, the first two line has this statement that most AI recruiting tools are just spam with a better UI. So that is a very strong statement. Some people will agree with, some people will disagree with, but at least people will react to that statement, and that's exactly what you want. The second thing is authenticity. Like Danica said, people want to buy from people. So you want to share insight you learn from your real life story, from real life conversation. And that's how you can get your content differentiated from AI generated general slobs. If we look at the second post here, so it has this quote of a founder hiring a UI UX designer, and that specific situation make this story feels a lot more authentic, and people will be interested in knowing, what happened behind the scene. Did the founder have success in hiring this designer? And for all of the clients we work with, we found that if you add a real life picture of your post, it can be super casual. You generally boost your impression a lot. Last thing is you want your post to be interesting. So it's a bit tricky in terms of how you can get a post interesting. And we found that if you share insights in a sympathetic way, and that's usually gets very good results. So if you can think about your audience is nodding their head while they're reading the content, then you are very close to success. For example, if you post about a challenge a FP&A analyst is facing, instead of saying that FP&A analysts are not succeeding in their work because they're adopting legacy tools, you can phrase that to be FP&A analysts, they are very capable, but because of the tool they are provided with, they don't have that much of efficiency in their work. So if your audience feel they are understood, they generally give you better engagement. And one last tip is try to avoid text wall. So for better readability, you want each paragraph to be 2 to 3 sentences max. Cassie can go to next slide. Yeah. So here are another two posts of Danica that does super well. I think it's over 30K impressions. The first post was about a founder in San Francisco having trouble with AI hiring platform because it brought more noise than real candidates. So first of all, it is very specific about a real founder in San Francisco who is having a real problem. And it introduced a new perspective on AI for recruiting is that AI for recruiting is actually hurting your efficiency because it brings more noise. And that's a new perspective that people might not heard before, and that makes this story very interesting. People want to read more about what's Danica's take on this situation. And the second post here is actually not related to Danica's own business, but it's actually about her story before founding Caddy AI. And we see here it has a very casual photo of Danica, and you probably have many of these casual photo in your albums. So but if you look at the engagement number, it does super well because just adding that photo does two things. Number one is it make this post like 100% more authentic. Secondly is it capture more area on your audience phone screen. So just by the area covered, that this post can grab people's attention more easily than a post with just text.
Interesting. And I know that you don't need a lot of followers to get a lot of impressions, right? LinkedIn will push out content that fits that criteria of what makes a great post, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just curious. I'll launch another poll here. It's just curious to know what's the most impressions you've ever gotten on a single post. So has anyone here ever gotten more than 10,000, more than 50,000, more than 1,000? I think the most I've ever gotten on a post was about 300,000 impressions. And I wasn't posting consistently. And I actually pinned that post on my profile. And it was just a photo of me talking about how working from home changed my life because I have all this free time. And it was a photo of at the Toronto Pearson Airport of a beer beside my laptop and me traveling on a Friday. And it did crazy numbers. And it fit a lot of the criteria you talked about, Charles. Very casual photo. I had no idea it would do those numbers, but it did. Okay. So one person with 50,000 or more. That's awesome. couple people with 1,000 to 10,000. I think it is definitely relative to the number of followers you have too. Um, but it doesn't mean something can't go viral. I know Danica, someone at Caddy, had a post that did over 200,000 impressions, and they only had 300 connections. So on one single post. Um, okay, cool. And I'll share those results. All right, and then
Yeah, so lastly, I just want to share a system that everyone can adopt to build their content strategy on LinkedIn. So number one is like we talk about, if you want to succeed on LinkedIn, the first thing is posting consistently. So all the successful LinkedIn accounts we studied has at least 200, 300 posts, and that means you probably need to post 3 times a week for a whole year to get that volume. And today with AI, you can build your reusable prompt, you can build your skills to have that momentum going. But with just consistency is not enough. We need the content to have quality. And that's where you can leverage real life materials. So, for example, you can leverage the transcripts of your client call, of your work call to get that pinpoint, get that insight you observe in your work. And you can talk about your entrepreneurship journey. You can even brainstorm with AI about some everyday thoughts you have about your business space and let AI to structure that thoughts into a story. And on Postbeam, there is a great feature called Mars, and that's really help you to turn those random thoughts into a real insights. And lastly, techniques. So if you ever have trouble with structure the post, with writing the hooks, today with AI, you can easily build that technique by finding a post you really like that performs very well and let AI to emulate the writing technique, writing format of that post while still keeping content yours. And we found AI is extremely good at emulating the general writing techniques. And finally, you want to read your analytics. You want to understand what type of topics perform well, what type of topic perform worse, and you want to focus on the type of content that your audience is more easily to engage with. So with that, I think if you constantly do that for a year, you will see great success on your LinkedIn account.
and I think Charles is really humble, but Charles has helped some founders, generate millions of impressions. It's really impressive. So it's really helpful, Charles. Thank you for sharing
Yeah,
your this the secret sauce.
no problem. What I found super interesting was indeed that some founders have 9,000 followers, while some founder only has 3,000 followers. But like the actually there is no correlation between the followers with the number of impressions. It's really about the individual post quality.
Hmm. Interesting. Well, I can take it from here. I'm going to talk a little bit about consistency, and I think one thing I'm using an example of Danica and her team. So this is what their content scheduler looks like for the month of January, and you can see they have everything scheduled at the beginning of each month, and they schedule everything for the entire team. And so that is what consistency looks like. It's planning ahead, making sure that the team is involved. And this is what some of the fastest growing teams in the world are doing. And Charles, I know you're seeing this too across a lot of the companies that you work with. This is Gamma and Cursor and Clay, three of the fastest growing companies in the world. All three don't really have anything to do with each other. They're in very different spaces, but they are generating hundreds of millions of impressions. And each of these companies, if Danica showed you before the cost per the CPM of how much you pay for ads, these companies are generating millions of dollars of organic of views worth if you were to pay in ads. That's how many impressions and how many views they're getting, and it's because they're investing in the entire team. And you'll see here, across the board, like each of these companies has over 500,000 followers. across the team. And the interesting thing is, it's not just the executives on the team; it's also individual contributors, and that's a really interesting shift we're seeing. And I think years and Danica talked about Elena Verna from Lovable, the head of growth there, and I know she had a great quote where she was talking about the future of organic content. If you asked her 5 years ago, she would have said SEO, but now it really is B2B social. So getting the team involved is paramount to success. So leads, like I'm kind of curious, like who here is actually getting leads from LinkedIn? And I'll send this out here. Um, I'll send this out. I'm kind of curious who is getting leads right now. Let me see if I can send this out. I don't think I can send this poll out, but I'm just curious, like if you're getting leads, maybe just comment in the chat if you're getting leads right now from LinkedIn. Yes, but not reliably. Yes. Nice. Nice. So we get a lot of leads, at Postbeam, and I know Danica, like you're generating 500 plus leads a year, which is crazy. And my experience, the best way and where I think people mess up, especially seeing Postbeam, we've got almost 100 founders that are using it now at this point. And I can see what works and what doesn't just from talking to people. And the biggest thing, number one, is don't sell in the post. A lot of people are including outbound links and comments. They're being overly salesy. You need to provide value and drive value first. And I think what Charles shared is a framework for creating content is perfectly aligned with that. And then number two, you need a system. So being consistent, what Danica talked about, not, a system that doesn't rely on you, that doesn't rely on whether you're sick or whether you go on vacation. So like planning ahead, scheduling content for the entire team, and helping create a system is key. And then the last thing, leads coming after engagement. And I'll show you. So I just included this slide like last minute because I had this post that went viral. It's maybe one of my biggest posts ever. And I just kind of copied the format of what I saw kind of online around this topic. And it was suggested through Postbeam because I saw something that went viral that I thought my niche would like. And so I copied the format, I turned it into a post with my own voice and added an image. And the key thing that really, and this drove almost 20 leads. And I didn't sell in the post. My system was that I just, commented back and reached out to every single person. And then after the fact, what I did is I actually reached out to people using warm lead signals. So I could see all of the people that are liking and commenting on this post. And then what I was able to do was I could just filter by people who were in our ICP. And so instead of having to go through everybody, I just plugged it into Postbeam and then I could, go through. And I think, you can do this manually again, like and just see if it works. But it's really powerful when you follow up and are consciously, trying to actually generate opportunities. And so this is exactly what I did with that post. And I generated over 20 different demos with it. But really powerful, like if you can start to do that. And I know, the title of this talk is how to go from 5,000 to 500,000 LinkedIn impressions without ads. But I do think there is a time and place for ads. And it is when you dial in your content, because I think if you're not running ads, you're at a disadvantage, but it only comes after. I've run LinkedIn ads for the last 15 years for different, for my last company, Hoppier, that I ran that grew to over 1,200 customers. And I could never figure out LinkedIn ads until I started creating great LinkedIn organic content. And so on the second day that I posted this, I boosted it. And you can see I spent $320 to boost it. And I ended up getting an additional 20,000 impressions. And what's interesting is the reactions from the ad. I only had three compared to 195. I only had nine comments compared to 749. And I had zero reposts compared to 11. And so you can see, ads kind of work, but at the end of the day, like creating the organic content, that is the most important part. And you can boost ads on LinkedIn targeting your specific ideal customer profile. This was targeting people who are, have very specific job titles and locations, and company sizes that we target. And the results still weren't like that incredible. So the most important thing is content. So just last question, I'm kind of curious before we get into the Q&A part, what are the tools that people are using right now? I'm just curious, like if in the comments, what are tools that people are using to drive growth through LinkedIn? I'm using HeyReach. I love HeyReach. I'm using Postbeam, of course. And then I'm using SalesNav. Love that tool. Cool. And then just a summary of everything we talked about. So, like we talked about how LinkedIn rewards patience. Charles talked about exactly what makes a great post. Danica talked about her experience going from a few hundred impressions to 700,000 plus and over 1 million plus impressions across the entire team, now generating over 500 leads. We talked about and I'm going to share everything after the call. So everyone's going to have access to the slides and also access to the video after. And we also talked about if this works, if you stick with it, and just being consistent is the number one key. And then identifying leads and consciously targeting people. So just last thing here, just any questions. If anyone has any questions, know there were a few in the comments, but we'll try to get to all of them, and we will, go for I think 10 minutes here. If there are any questions at all. So I know Farine asked, when you post video content on LinkedIn, can it have the same impact as written posts? I know, Danica, you mentioned you responded to this, but do you want to maybe expand a little bit on your experience?
Yeah, I've tested all three a lot. So post with a picture, post just text, and then a post with video. And it's been pretty consistent, at least for me. The posts with a photo do by far the best in terms of just virality. And then just a text post is the second best, and video is the last. I don't know why. So many people have told me video is like the new thing and you should post video on LinkedIn. It doesn't seem to get much reach for me. However, I will say I've noticed for like bottom funnel content to like convert someone into a demo, into booking a call, video does well. So I think it depends what you're going after. If it's just more reach, definitely the post with the text and the photo for our team has done way better consistently.
Nice. And then we had another question here. How do you encourage employees to post regularly if their personal network may not be aligned with company's ideal customer persona? Um, I can touch on this, or Charles, I don't know if you have experience here on that also, but the thing that we when we work with some companies that have multiple people that have Postbeam accounts where they're scheduling, they're creating content, and the thing that we always say is like it's going to create more opportunities for people personally, and it's good to remind them that. And we have some data that shows that. But they're able to take that audience with them to whatever they work on in the future. And so, for them, I think it's just really showing that, hey, like that audience that you build, this is your career. You're the one that is an expert in the niche. And whatever you do in the future, you're going to take that network with you. And also it's going to make you, be better at your job, right? So, and make your job easier and your life easier.
Yeah, just to add on that, I think I was listening to a podcast where I believe is the marketing head of Clay was sharing that he encouraged his employee to post, whatever they want to post. It doesn't have to be aligned with the company's business. As long as it doesn't violate certain bottom lines, he doesn't care. He actually just want each employee of Clay to have grow their impression, grow their network, and at some point, people will notice their employee and they will notice the company that these people are working at.
And we had Elias at App8 ask, how much editing do you do to Postbeam posts? And are you able to build in the post approach in the instructions and decide on pics to attach? It's a good question. I think we all have kind of a similar but different approach. I know Danica, you're using Postbeam more to schedule, and I know you've used some of the posts, but you sprinkle in some posts from there. I know you have a custom GPT that you put into Postbeam. Um, but I think it's all kind of different. Like it all really depends on what works for you. And then I know Charles, like even with you, I mean, we work with Content Viking, me and Emil, my co-founder, and you guys are also taking transcripts, conversations with Marv. But I think the thing I've realized, and we've all realized, is that you don't really know um, what is really going to work until you actually just post content. And I think eventually you get to a point where you realize different formats, like there may be specific formats that work for you that you do on an ongoing basis, and then you mix those in and you do them consistently. Um, like I do those for Postbeam where I share very transparently, hey, this is day 250 of building Postbeam. Um, I know, Danica, you have some posts like that too, but I feel like you don't really know until you just put it out there. Like I know, Danica, Jake had a post that went absolutely super viral, and you thought nothing was going to happen, and you didn't edit that post at all, right, from Postme.
Yeah, and for context, Jake at the time he just started his LinkedIn account had like 200 followers. And he had a post that went more viral than any of my posts have ever gone viral. So, to your earlier point, you don't need to have a lot of followers to get a lot of impressions on your posts.
Mhm. And photos to attach to, like I think, we talked about it, like casual photos, photos at work, kind of behind the scenes, I think work really well. Product updates, that kind of thing, stories of helping customers.
Yeah, what we'll do with our team is from time to time we'll just like whip out our camera and just take pictures of us working. We're not doing anything special. We're not like we don't wear makeup or anything. We're literally just like, okay, let's just snap a couple pics. And then we'll have our post get generated through Postbeam and I'll just find random posts to attach photos to. Like they're not even that relevant to the actual text and it's wild. Like you'll still get tons of likes and impressions and stuff like that. So, and then other times you'll have a picture that you're like, okay, I actually have a really good idea in mind and I'm feeling really creative. And those are usually the days where I post 2 posts a day because I'm the one going and adding those to my pre-scheduled content pieces. But yeah, it's really just there's not much editing to answer your question. I think
We
actually
had a,
the least amount of editing, the better. Like people really prefer the authentic stuff that's unedited, I would say.
we had another question. That's good advice. We had another question from Evan. What do you think of carousels in 2026? Charles, any insights?
Um, so first of all, like I haven't personally worked on Carousel, but I would say the most successful post I've seen is usually just casual short post instead of Carousel. Uh, I figure that's because the algorithm probably prioritize the post over like the long article, which is what Carousel is about.
We have another comment from Evan. Does time of day or what day you post matter for consistency or just posting multiple times a week?
Can I take this one? Because I spent a lot of time looking into this. So before this year, it did matter a lot. Like you would always want to post in the mornings during a work week. So like Monday to Friday, sweet spot was like 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. was like made a huge difference for me in my posts. And then LinkedIn changed their algorithm. I want to say in January or like in the last 3 months. And now it doesn't matter as much. And the way it works is kind of random. Like you'll post your post and they will push that post out to people like days later at random times. And I read this somewhere. I mean, Charles can probably fact check this, but if let's say you're targeting like founders, which is what like who we target usually, if there's like 5 founders that like the post, then they're going to start pushing it out to more founders days later. And you can see this because before when you would post something in the like, if you posted something on Monday, you would only get notifications for that one post the next 3 days. But now, if you post something on Monday, you check your notifications and people are liking your content from like a month ago or 2 weeks ago or 3 days ago. Like it's really random. So I've noticed now the timing actually doesn't matter as much at all. Even the other day, I posted something at like 8 p.m. I was thinking, no one's going to like this because it's late at night. And I got way more likes on that post than all the others during the week that I posted in the morning. So from my experience as of lately, it does not matter as much.
Yeah,
But
I'll
Charles,
echo that. I think it's a new thing to do with the new LinkedIn algorithm. We talked about that a little bit. Also, we have like a Slack group with all of our, Postbeam customers, and I think we were sharing some of our research there on the topic where that LinkedIn update is making it so that your content is just being served now to people that are in your more specific niche that you're in. We had another question from Nicholas asking about Postbeam. So he said the content was really good at first, but the content got really far from what our brand was about. Have you updated the brains to help us get more reliable output? Also, the image libraries. We need the generated images to look on brand and like our actual products. Thanks, Nicholas. Great to hear from you and see you. Nicholas was, you're one of the first 10 customers at Postbeam when we started nine months ago. We updated the model, so it's quite a bit different. I'll say like the thing with content, and the thing we realize with Postbeam is that content is so subjective. And we updated our model, but it's gonna take a little bit of massaging. And I think part of it is that um, you know, what works is you're not really gonna know until you put it out there. Um, and that's I think that goes for any form of content, any form of AI generated content, whether it's video, photo, text, you name it. And we don't actually do AI image generation at Postbeam anymore because we realized that the image generation, like, we didn't have guardrails set up to allow people to not post them so frequently. And I think there's a little bit of fatigue around AI generated images when it's clear that they're AI generated images, especially when it's something like organic content on LinkedIn, where people want to hear stories. They want to hear, something that feels and sounds real. Um, so, I think to answer your question, it's changed a lot, and we've learned a lot since then. But yeah, it's the platform's grown a lot. So thanks for your support and being a customer. Cool. I don't think we have any other questions. So unless anyone does, which doesn't look like it, then we're going to go. Thanks everybody for joining. Thanks so much for your time, and we'll see you later.
Thank you, everyone.
thank
Bye
you.
bye.